Hi, John, and welcome to our annual end of year, start of new year podcast. How are you doing?
Good, yeah. It's kind of the International Schools Podcast ritual now. Us
Yeah,
and 900,000 other podcasters.
exactly. Yeah.
But anyway,
So
it's great. It's great to do it, and nice to see you, Dan. We actually just got to cheers each other because I think
exactly,
it's, it's still the festivities.
it is. Yeah. Well, so let's give some background. I'm in Austria. I'm very fortunate. We've been here for 3 weeks with the family, so I'm in my kids'
Oh,
bedroom now.
nice.
Um, just skiing every day, which has been fantastic. So I'm kind of just come off the slopes, got back here, so it's a bit red in the face from the cold. But it's been great. It's been a really good trip. Good time to had to do a bit of work, but generally speaking, disconnected, which is nice.
That's
So
really
yeah,
important. Yeah, that's great.
yeah,
And this year, had the snow has been very good. I think
not
compared to other Christmases in
not
Switzerland, where I'm
not
at,
here.
people are very oh, really?
Yeah, the coverage isn't very good. The runs are open. It snowed quite a bit over Christmas time, and then it's kind of got a bit crappy since then. So yeah, it's still great. It's still, first world problem, but the snow's not great here.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what about
First of
you,
all,
John?
I was down in southern France, spent some time in
Yep.
Avignon and Nîmes, which was great. Have been there a few times, but always by bicycle when we've done long bicycle trips. And we've never really spent any time in Avignon and Nîmes. So we were like, let's go and do it. And it was great. Yeah, it's this chock block full of history. It's just a beautiful setting and kind of got to learn a lot about gladiators and the Romans and learned a lot
Really?
about the seven popes that were in Avignon. So those kind of, and what I noticed was the museums. As a museum, it's kind of hard to get people engaged if you just have things in boxes.
Yep.
But in the Pope's, in the Palais des Papes, the Pope's Palace, they had these tablets, and you scanned a QR code, and then they would have the information about the room. But when you lifted up your tablet, the whole room turned into as if you were there on the day.
Oh wow.
So you could see the food on the table, you could see the people moving, of course, all AI generated, but really cool. So as you're going into these very barren, monolithic rooms and you lift up your iPad, then it's all interactive and it's just really nicely done. And I was just thinking, for museums, that's kind of a big thing now. Is how you're competing against World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
virtual reality. So it was just really interesting to see how well they did that. And then in Nîmes, we went to the big arena, and there you put a headphones on and you walk around the arena and they're interviewing the different gladiators, they're interviewing a prisoner that's going to get eaten by the lions, and it's just really immersive with voices, and as you move around you're in the physical space. I just thought very cleverly done.
So very ignorant. I'm just looking on a map where it is. I had no idea there were gladiators and things, and even the Pope had a place in Nîmes. I'd say that's
So
news to
yeah,
me. I know.
Nîmes is one of the best preserved Roman cities after Rome.
Yeah. Oh wow. Looks like, yeah. I see the
And
Colosseum and everything. Looks great.
yeah, no, it's lovely. And then the popes were there for about 100 years in the 1300s. There was a kind of a schism, but no. So feel very relaxed. We do train, so I love the train. Sat
Yeah.
and read a lot of books, which was good. You can read, or when you have 5 hours of train, a 400 or 500 page book just does the job.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So, and are you still doing the bike trips out of interest? Anything planned?
Yeah.
Because I keep meaning to get some more information because that's something I want to try this year. I want to do a bike trip, so I want to get some information on how you structure it.
So we're hoping to do the bike trip from southern Germany to Venice.
Okay.
It's called the Augustus Way. It's a Roman road that was built about 100 years, 200 years. Don't quote me on the dates. And that now it has been refurbished, and it's a bike path that goes through southern Germany, Austria, into Italy.
Okay, great. And do you stay at guest houses all the way? Do you or do you camp at all?
We're very random. We just get on the phone and say, okay, booking.com, what's in the area? And then
Yeah.
we book,
Okay.
rooms. Mostly it's a room or a bed and breakfast, or sometimes it's even farmhouses have rooms. Yeah, we're just, the thing is, when you're biking all day, it's if you plan, then you feel like you have pressure, like, oh, we have to get this distance. And sometimes we're like, oh, we could do another 20K. So we keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So back to the trip. So was your whole family there with you in France, and were you there for Christmas as well?
No, my kids both they're adults, so they both had their own thing. We saw each other. They came for a week during Christmas, but then afterwards
Oh, they
they
came for
had
a week.
their own
Okay,
things.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, yeah,
remember you
yeah.
saying you were going to come and stay in Christmas. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, it feels good. I just, it's been really nice being kind of disconnected from emails and not something I'm very good at. So I always appreciate. And also, my phone had it locked. Could look at it before 8 a.m. Those kind of things.
Oh,
Turned off at
do you
9.
use one of the oh, you do you use one of the apps that blocks your phone? What
Yeah,
do you use?
I just use what's in the iPhone.
Okay.
The only thing I do not lock is the actual phone. I have a list of phone numbers that I can reach, and my mother is quite elderly. So,
Yeah.
but otherwise, I found it's been really good because it's just a hassle, and then you have to put in a code, and you have to ignore it and go into the settings. I'm like, yeah, I'll just wait. So it's been good.
There's a thing a couple of people have been telling me about where it's like a physical box. It's about the same size as an AirPod thing, and you just have this box near your phone, and it bricks it for like, till you
Uh,
move it away. And people just have that there, turn it on, and then just leave it on. And again, you can just you can allow phone calls or whatever as well. So yeah,
that's very cool.
I want to get that's something I'm really bad at is not being on my phone and my computer all the time. So that's something I want to work on in 2025 for sure.
Yeah, so like when we went down and traveled, we only had our phones, and so podcasts, and then on the train or reading, and then in the place that we stayed, we didn't have a computer, and just when you don't have a computer and you have your phone, you actually, I think, only to fight one device is easier than fighting the tablet and then the computer and the phone. I just,
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. It's
yeah,
all a bit too
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's
It's
funny. I think
interesting. Go ahead, Jen.
no. Carry on. John.
No, it's just interesting how you were saying it's really challenging to disconnect, and I think now even more there is. Not only do we have the attention economy where these apps are trying to keep your attention, but there's this whole idea of the intention economy. So, what are your intentions? And being able to predict your intentions and then set things up so your intentions are met through digital ecosystems.
Well, very interesting. So I mean, that can be negative as well as positive. I guess 'cause, companies can use that in a way to. I mean, there's already so much predictive behavior going on just to keep you on these apps as well, isn't there? Which is why I try not. I'm much less on social media than I was, to be honest. In LinkedIn is basically it for me for work. And I follow a few people on Instagram and Twitter, but I'm much on it much less. It's by no means every day anymore.
Yeah. I actually closed my Twitter account after 17 years.
Wow.
Is it 17 years? Has Twitter been around that long? No, maybe not.
Yeah, interesting because it's that's an interesting topic because I I mean opinions are divided between the whole Elon Musk lack of no censorship free for all. I actually prefer it with no censorship. I'm very much a free speech absolutist. I think I you know I gave up on it as a work tool, that's for sure. Like it wasn't a place where I wanted to be talking about work things. But in terms of to follow people, I follow. I think it is interesting. You can read some sort of controversial opinions that you couldn't read before. I'm not sure. Do you have a different opinion on it?
No, I just had some serious problems with some of Musk's approaches.
What, for
And
example, like what kind of
oh,
things?
I think through the election and
Yeah.
the,
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a bit of an agenda of him being involved in government. He has some big
Sure.
companies, and
Yeah. I
also
agree.
just some of the things on Twitter got really toxic, and I
Yeah,
was like, oh, I don't really need to see this. I went to Blue
yeah,
Sky because somebody recommended it, and I actually am not very active there, but I definitely feel that a lot of people in the education space that I interact with in my professional learning network moved over there, so I'm enjoying seeing their posts. But it's a bit of a vacuum. I mean, it's my PLN, and I'm not
yeah.
reading out as much.
I think I may join it just to again, same thing. So many people I interact with in the ed tech world and the education world have gone there. So again, I might have an account just to lurk and see what people are posting. I think it's probably worth. In my understanding, is it's just pretty much a straight up copy of Twitter.
It feels very much like Twitter. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it does. Yeah, it's the same idea. They've grown. I tried Threads, but I got off it. I was just yeah. After a while, it's a lot of the stuff is not purposeful in it. I just
yeah,
find it stresses you out.
it
Uh,
does.
so I just feel that if you get caught up in it, it stresses you and you're kind of in that space and it's hard to get out. And I think sometimes just for my own kind of positivity, because I like to be positive,
Yeah,
it really diminishes my positivity. I
yeah,
really, I'm
definitely.
like, wow, I'm down.
Yeah, and again, I agree. That's why I just spend much less time on these platforms. I think I don't like being a victim of the algorithm, because it's feeding you content and it's feeding you, and you can see it's feeding you things that are like, oh, maybe I agree with this, maybe I disagree with this, so I want to post and everything. It's I don't like it. I don't like
Yeah.
that side of it.
But Dan, you're far more willing to engage and share opinions online than I am. I'm super cautious. I spend, I post on a regular basis on LinkedIn resources and articles and what I really try as best as I can not to amplify myself and also, I'm very careful how I word things. It takes me, I do it once a week, kind of as a professional development thing. And then
Yeah,
it also forces me to go and look at articles and read podcasts. Read articles and listen to podcasts, and then also look at resources. But the curation takes time to write something that's you feel you're comfortable and is not going to offend anybody and also super neutral. I know you're
yeah.
not like that.
I don't know. I think I am the same as you, to be honest. And maybe to you I am. To me, I'm very guarded. I always think very carefully about what I say. I don't post anything controversial. I don't think, maybe on the podcast I have a few spicy takes here and there,
Yeah, I
but
think that's what it is. Yeah,
I think on the social media I'm very careful. You just, I mean, you know, you don't want to get cancelled, for saying the wrong thing. So it's you gotta be careful.
yeah, absolutely. No, no, no. That's so true. And I think also nowadays with these things being accessible and with the algorithms, if the algorithm picks up something that you said wrong or that's misinterpreted and then amplifies it, then it's quite hard to rein it in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think on the podcast. I mean, it's that. I guess it's very free flowing conversation. So you can sometimes say things where you're like, "Oh, I wonder how that would come across." But
And
so
we've
far,
done that.
no one's ever said anything.
Well, now that you've mentioned it, I'm sure somebody's going to say something now.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
joking. I'm
Yeah,
joking. No,
yeah,
Dan, we have talked a couple of times of editing things out, and we didn't. No,
we
but
never
I
did.
think I think if you have just an honest conversation, which we don't script these things, and we have an honest conversation, I think generally people are wonderful. They're humble. They want to share, and I think it doesn't get too controversial. You could have a controversial stance, but then I think you get into a whole new dynamic. If you're a
Yeah,
podcaster and provoking your guests or challenging them, I don't know. Maybe
yeah. I
you
mean, if
get more traction.
you look at the most successful podcasts, like Joe Rogan, probably is the number one.
Yeah,
He just has a relaxed conversation with people. It's very very easygoing.
yeah, absolutely. And and controversy often generates attention, and attention generates following. So there's that
Yeah,
whole dynamic. But I was just looking, we've been working on revamping our graphics and everything.
yeah.
And I just realized this is episode 146.
Wow, here we go. Fantastic. 200 is going to be when's that going to be then? Never 20. It's going to
sometime
be
in,
another every year. It's next
yeah,
year.
another year, next year.
Every
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
What?
it's
What?
great.
No, it's great. And your son or daughter has been helping us with the graphics. Is that right? Who was it? Is it
Yes,
one of
my
the?
daughter is
Yeah.
redid the graphics. Yeah,
Yeah. It
she's
looks really
quite
good. Looks really
talented,
nice.
and it's yeah. So it's been nice to get a revamp, and because you know I was just realizing, you know, what people say. Oh, who listens to your podcast? We don't do much analytics as far as I know. In the Podbean, you can look at kind of downloads.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have had, like last week, we had 17 people join our podcast on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
we do get some traffic there, but it is kind of a mystery. But in some ways, it's nice because I think when you don't have expectations of having a big audience or even an audience, and you're maybe just talking because we're both interested in the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
and the
Exactly.
topic, I think it creates a different dynamic. What do you think, Dan?
I yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah. It's Yeah. 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 Exactly. 100% agreed.
Because
What?
I think if we're worrying about likes, followers, then it becomes a different dynamic.
And everyone says like in any content, like music's a perfect example. I was listening to a podcast about I don't remember. It was a rapper who had a very successful first song, it's triple platinum, and then tried to make follow that success and make something people would like. And the second single was double platinum, and the third one was platinum. It went down, 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 and then in the end, he was like, "This is ridiculous. I've got to do what I did in the beginning, which is make something I want." And all the best artists, they say that they make music they want. I mean, if you look at you know all the greats like the Queens and the Bowies, they made a lot of stuff which is a complete different transfer away from what they did, And I think you
Yeah,
have to. I'm not comparing ourselves to Queen or Bowie, but like you have to do something that you find interesting because we're not making any. It's not a business. I mean, I have a company. I don't even mention it really on the podcast, and so there's no point doing it if you don't find it interesting. And I think that's why we've kept going for so long. It's just what we find interesting.
absolutely. And you know, I counted the amount of guests that we've had, and we've had over 200 people on this podcast.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, and you know, I think that as you said, we enjoy the conversations. The guests that we have are always super interesting. You know, I'm just thinking like the one that sometimes you know you have a guest and as you're talking to them, suddenly you realize, oh my God, had no idea about this. And I
Yeah, yeah.
always walk away feel like I learned something. I'm like free Petey.
Who do you think like anyone stands out for you from 2024 that you thought was a great conversation?
Wow, that's a lot of guests. I thought Clara
Yeah.
Hawking, with the EU AI Act, I thought she did a really good job.
And that was interesting. 'Cause I had no idea about that. I didn't even know that was existed.
Yeah, yeah. I found that really interesting. I really liked Kathleen Nagley's digital twin. She created an avatar, a carbon copy of her, and
Yeah.
she interacts with it for all her decisions and reflections. Yeah, that was super interesting. There's so many. It's these are fresh in my mind. I like the one we did with Carlos about him going on a walk and disconnecting and how
I was like that,
challenging.
yeah. Carlos
Yeah,
David, he was great.
yeah.
I really liked Fred Mitnick, Teachers Without Borders. That was really interesting to learn about what he
Wasn't
was
that
doing.
interesting? Yeah, and I actually just gave that book to somebody that is in the corporate world, and they were thinking about, oh, I really want to change, and I've always thought about education. I said, oh, you should read this book because I
Yeah,
just thought it
definitely.
was so inspiring. Yeah,
And
and Danny, you've also gone. I mean, I know you never talk about your company, but you guys have kind of reinvented yourselves in some way.
yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I mean that was before last year, but still, we're very much now at AppCD. Well, we renamed from Apps Events to AppCDU. That was a big thing last year actually because weren't so much focused on the events. Before we were doing Google Summits, like started up with you, obviously. Now we're doing very much kind of Google technical services. We're still doing PD and training. Bogdan runs heads up PD, but we're very much doing Google licenses, you know Google security audits, and technical things. So yeah, we rebranded, and and actually the big thing, the big change for me is AI, Google AI. Like, if I'm talking about next year, like quarter one, January, February, March 2025, I'm 100% focused on AI, nothing else. That's all I'm thinking about is
What does that mean? Say you're 100% focused on AI as
yeah.
like I've been using. I really like the Gemini with Google Slide Deck and the image generator. It's
Yeah, I
phenomenal.
mean, Gemini, not just from personal use, because I'm using it more and more in my everyday work, but just in terms of, getting it out there, because Gemini is really starting to get a lot of traction with international schools. We've had a couple of schools that bought 100 licenses now, which is huge. Um, so focusing on that, focusing on finding ways that, Google Gemini can be used by schools, working with schools, and that's kind of my big theme
That's great.
for because I've also decided to break down my years. I was always very much like an annual planner, and now I've gone for quarters. And I read a book called The 12-Week Year over Christmas, which is all about, you know, you plan the quarter as if it's a year, and it's amazing, and you get so much more done. And because people, when you head close to a deadline, you always focus on things more. And I think the school year breaks up into quarters. Like the first two, January to March and April to June, they're kind of a, after the Christmas holidays term. Then you've got the summer, July, June, July, August, July, and then you're into the autumn. So I think that's one of my thinking. My big themes for me are thinking in quarters and AI as a focus. Like that's my thing.
I think AI is going to be a focus for everybody, like it or
Yeah,
not.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I spent
you,
the
you're doing a
holidays
lot with it.
reading.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've been doing workshops for ECIS and also the PTC, and that's been really great. And it's so interesting because I did a bunch of workshops at the beginning of this academic year, so 2024. And it's just amazing. Sometimes I'll be asked to do another workshop, or even in my context, as I'm teaching, I'm thinking what I taught the kids last year about AI, well, this year I'm going to have to reteach it, or the parents that
oh
I
yeah.
work in our school community. It's just things are changing so fast.
Oh, I mean, the new
And
Google Gemini model compared to the last is it's just the recent one is unbelievable
yeah,
how much has changed.
and I find that all these tools, be it Claude, Chat GPT, or Gemini, or I haven't tried Gork yet, and that's something I need to start looking at. But it just the power of these tools and the acceleration of change and how these things become more powerful, like zero point 0.1 in chat gpt, and then I'm just thinking some of these new features that just like the search in chat gpt I love. You can say get me all the urls. It's mind boggling, and I think it's just hard to keep up. I
Yeah.
feel like I need to keep up because that's my field. I'm teaching kids about digital fluency, but I'm struggling to keep up because there's so much going on. It's so fast. And when do you have time to sit and actually try all these things? I don't know how
Yeah,
yourself.
I do. I mean, I'm a bit different, I guess, in that because we're completely in the Google world. I don't really have time for the other stuff. So I'm all in on Gemini, which means you can if that's all you're doing, the one tool, then you can focus a lot on it. And it's embedded in all the different Google apps. It's embedded in Sheets and Drive. So there's so much more you can do that's very like task specific, in terms of like not so much thinking about the big picture, but just like how do I create pivot tables and pull data in from different documents and things like that. So I'm very much focused on the Google side and very much kind of on the practical side of it, like looking at it in terms of, doing doing someone's job. How does it help them do their job, basically?
Yeah, and that is what people are going to want, because a lot of people don't have the time to really unpack the tool. So if you can do webinars and yeah, I've been doing some webinars with the Gemini in the Google Workspace, and it's been great. I mean, I just find that I like that it's task focused and it's
Yeah,
very much production focused in the sense it's about you're in this ecosystem, it's looking at your folders, it's looking at your Google Drive, it's looking at your slide decks,
yeah.
your sheets, and I really think it's quite seamless. It's quite powerful. Do you think this is a game changer for schools?
Absolutely. I think it's just starting. I think it wasn't, it was released, it wasn't quite ready for prime time, but I think, you know, there's kind of four groups of people who work for international schools using it. You've got leadership, which is using it very lightly, but should be using it more, but starting to think about it. You've got kind of the back office staff, business office, support people. They're using it much more, very much to do, day-to-day tasks, admissions tasks, school management, logistics tasks. I'm seeing it used a lot, obviously a lot by tech directors. Tech directors are early adopters. Their tech IT departments are using it, and then teachers, starting to see teachers use it in their everyday classroom. Some are using some of the teaching specific tools, but a lot are using Gemini. So yeah, it's interesting. I'd say the biggest group of people using it in schools, in my opinion. I'm curious what you think, John. The back office, like I mentioned, is business office support staff. That's what I've seen using it the most, along with tech directors, and then teachers, and then leadership, kind of a lot less.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that leadership is not using it as much. I would say that some of the teachers, the ones that really engage with it, Notebook LMN, has been
Notebook
amazing what
LM
I've
is
seen.
fantastic.
Yeah,
And now you get the premium version. If you buy Google Gemini licenses for your school, you get the premium version of Notebook LM, which is really good.
yeah, and so those kind of that I was just watching an IB Lang Lit teacher uh, generating summaries of all these different books and literary styles, and then he turned it into a podcast like we did. We
Yeah.
actually had Notebook LM do a podcast for us, and it's just really amazing and how it aggregates this information and delivers it in a way that's very accessible. I mean, there's so many different stakeholders like students and teachers and colleagues that can really engage with it. I think it's so interesting that
And definitely, and as well, I think it's by no means certain who is going to win and who's going to be you know, who's going to be the MySpace and who's going to be the Facebook out of all these AI companies, because ChatGPT is losing share month on month, because Gemini's getting better, all these other tools. You've got Facebook, I mean Meta. That I mean, I've got a lot of time for the fact that Mark Zuckerberg's made it all open source. One of the only big models that's open source. Elon Musk, that he's getting going with AI tools. I mean, he's apparently built one of the most powerful parallel computers recently now to do this. So I think there's a lot of people just getting into this, and I think
yeah.
out of those, I think Meta is going to be huge in this. That's really I'm hearing more and more about it over the last couple of months.
Personally, I'm not excited that Meta's getting more into it, to be honest, especially that now they're going to release all these AI bots into Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, to be clear, yeah, I'm not a fan I rarely use Facebook, but I like the fact it's open source.
Yeah,
On a
no,
commercial
I
approach.
get that. That
It's the
resonates
only
for
one.
sure.
Yeah.
But it's again, as a couple pundits have said, is this intention economy. They are just hungry for data, and the more data they can get. And somebody was writing, what does this mean now when you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook, and half the people you're interacting with are actually AI bots, but you might actually not know. So I think, for all the enthusiasm for the work aspect of it, of the tools and the efficiencies and the workflows that you can really leverage to make things more effective, maybe more efficient, just shorten some timelines. I think there's a whole layer of ethics and geopolitics that I'm not sure we're doing a good job as educators to really unpack that and say, what does this mean, bigger picture?
Yeah, you're right, 100% right. It's but like you said, it's changing so rapidly that who has the time, to really stay on top of it? I mean, schools are all setting up AI working groups, aren't they? Which are varying degrees of doing anything. But and I think a lot of schools are doing it because it's a box they have to take to, someone in leadership said, have an AI task force or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, schools haven't really got to the bottom of what to do with it.
I think one of the things that's for me that I'm finding very interesting, it's the first time that there are 9 tech companies that run all AI, basically,
Yeah.
that have the processing power, the resources, the infrastructure. and five of them are in the US. So you have technology companies basically making decisions for us and managing our lives in many different ways where there is no, I mean, it's, Sam Altman. Who decides if Sam Altman should stay or not? I mean, I have no say. And just this idea of these big tech corporations holding so much power over us because they have this information and these efficiencies and these fluencies that just make us quite addicted to them.
And I think the reason that's all America, that's the fault of Europe. That's Europe because I'll send you this. I'll post it in the show notes. Someone shared a really funny Venn diagram, and it had you know, China, the US, and Europe, and it was what technologies overlap, and it was like drones and everything much more in China. Social media, AI, kind of mixed. That was the intersection between the US and China. So there was some things that were China, some were US, a lot of technologies that were in between. And then Europe, the Europe circle was separate, and it just said regulation. The only thing that EU is good at is excessive regulation. And I mean, you know, how many Facebooks, how many Googles, how many Nvidias have come out of Europe? I mean, it's just that. I mean, I mean, there hasn't. There's a lot of it. There's CERN and there's a lot of high level tech things, but Europe has not created the entrepreneurial environment. I think to get have these AI companies. I don't think.
Yeah. No, no, I think it's interesting. And then Europe, as you said, the EU AI Act is a very interesting, uh, kind of set of policies that,
Yeah,
I after talking to Clara and reading more about it, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's just, it feels a bit like the Wild West, and it's a movie that keeps changing.
yeah,
And I find it interesting to be reading about it and learning. But I'm just wondering long term, like, I'm sure you've done the same, Dan. A lot of pundits are kind of doing the predictions for
yeah,
2025 and this whole thing of AI agents.
yeah,
I think Google's one is called Jarvis, is it?
yeah. I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and somebody was just writing that no, we won't get rid of middle managers, but middle managers will be managing AI agents instead of people. And I was like,
definitely.
wow, that's interesting.
I think this is the year. I mean, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of layoffs because of AI. I think there's no doubt about that.
Oh, you think this is the year?
Well, I could be wrong. It could be the year after, but it's coming. I mean, there's a whole swathe of jobs that are going to be replaced by AI. Teachers are
In
saying,
your mind, who are these people that are going to lose their jobs?
I think any kind of administrative type job, where you're processing things, I think is going to go. I mean, the jobs that are safe are the in-person jobs. They're tradesmen, tradesmen and women. There's teachers, there's salespeople, whatever. I mean, that I think is going to stay. But I think for everyone else, I don't think that, for example, you're going to replace one person. But let's say you have five people doing a job. With the AI tools, will make them so much efficient that you only have to need one person to do it. You see what I mean? I don't
Do
think it
you see
will.
that in your context? I mean, do you see, if you look at the industry, you're in education, ed technology, are you seeing that? Are you see maybe some
Definitely.
workflows that you do that you might not need a fifth, you might need somebody only 30%?
Yeah, we're quite a nimble team. So nothing with us, but I've seen it a lot in specifically in coding. People are getting you can see the tech layoffs. They're getting rid of coders because one coder with a good there's a whole concept of a 10x program anyway. Someone who's good is 10. They're not twice as good as an average person. They're 10 times as good. And a 10x programmer with AI tools, the potential where they could get. So I think with technical jobs, the ability to write and debug code is that's a no-brainer. I mean, those jobs are gone. I mean, I was advised someone to get into being a programmer, but now, I mean, I think if you're a really good programmer, I would advise to do it. But an average one, I think you're not going to be kept on.
What about education? Because Dan, you're working with a lot of tech directors. You travel, you were in Asia and the Middle East, you work with schools. And as you understand this, the AI tools, and you're saying for yourself, you're focusing on AI and the workflows. What do you think? How are teachers going to be negatively impacted? Do you think there will be layoffs of teachers, or that's just not going to happen because it's human interaction? I'm just curious what some of your thinking is.
Yeah, I don't. It's tough to love teachers, isn't it? Because parents for an international school, the parents are paying. The parents are the customer, and they want a certain ratio of teachers to students. So I think teachers, I'd be surprised. I mean, obviously AI can save teachers time in the back office task, but you still have the main part of a job is the classroom time still. I think support staff in schools. I think maybe IT departments might get a bit lighter in schools. I think maybe less leadership. I'm not sure. I think there were the groups of schools. I'm sure that in the Nord Anglias and the the big groups will be looking at a lot of their central management will be going. I think. What do you think? What do you think, John, in terms of how it's
Well,
going to affect
I
schools?
I was actually with a school doing some PD, and I had lunch with one of their HR people, and they were just over the moon about these tools and how it was helping them with a lot of what they would say, contracts, job descriptions, just those
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
documents that they have to generate and check and make sure it's legal. And they have just absolutely embraced it and said it has brought so many efficiencies. That said, it was clear from the conversation that the person and his team were being very focused and purposeful about learning how to use the tools. They were like setting time aside and really doing, as you said, they kind of did an audit. What makes sense to use AI tools? What doesn't make sense? Should job descriptions? One thing they're not doing is not using AI to select candidates. They just decided that was not going to happen.
Yeah.
But generating a lot of those documents that you need, legal documents, procedural documents, they said that these tools were so
Yeah.
powerful
I
and
mean,
really
from what I've been
helped.
reading, the legal profession, it's up there with I was mentioning about programming, coding, how that's been you know job losses through AI. I'm a legal profession. That's the perfect example of how AI can help, because so much of it is, you know, finding prior case law, doing contracts, things like that. So I think it's definitely going to affect the legal profession in terms of a lot of job losses as well.
The thing that I like is the whole idea of medicine. And, if you read about AI, you're definitely hearing a lot of traffic about how medicine, there are a lot of advantages for
That
analysis of data and for cancer research and some other things. That to me is super exciting.
that's really exciting, and that's why I'm very worried about the EU's focus on regulation, because I think it's a Wild West, and I think the Wild West should be left to be the Wild West for a while. I know that's a risky approach. Not everyone would agree with me. A
Yeah.
lot of people here saying the EU should be regulating, but I think now the potential benefits to humanity are so big. I understand the downsides, the robots take over the world, but I think that like you said, medicine, the things it could do if left, and I really don't think we should be putting any brakes on it right now. That's what do
Yeah.
you think, John, in
Yeah.
terms of regulation in the EU and things, letting things go, or regulating it?
I'm caught in between both. I do see the value of regulation, especially in a school setting. Uh, you know, just the other today, I'm back kind of getting ready for work, and I asked for Gemini to generate a picture of a teacher juggling multiple tasks.
Yeah.
It was a white person immediately, and I was like, no, I don't want a white person. You know, it was just by
Was that
default,
was
and
that was that Gemini?
yeah, Gemini.
Yeah.
It was just, and so those kind of things I think we have to be better at. And I'm not sure how, Ken and Dee Lanier wrote this wonderful book, The Promises and Perils of AI in Education. And I think there has to be more ethics. And I kind of building on this idea, I just finished this book called Supremacy, which is kind of the story of Sam Altman and DeepMind's gentleman. Hasibi is his name.
Yeah.
You, yeah, and how both of their initial intent was to better humanity, solve the problems, get this AGI, artificial general intelligence, to really be working so we could solve all these problems. And, you know, both of them had real deep convictions that these tools were going to help and potentially really be able to solve many of these existential problems that we have. And then as the book develops, you quickly see, you know, Microsoft and Google get involved. And now what it is, they're both for profit, and these big tech companies are running these. And so I think there is that dynamic where some regulation is important because I'm not sure what check and balances there are for the general population with these organizations. They have their own check and balances within their own corporate structures. But I'm just thinking sometimes it might be good to have an outside eye or an outside entity saying, let's just double check. Let's have some other people look at this through a different lens and tell you if we're not kind of veering off a bit. That's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, interesting. I think I mean, the race thing is, oh yeah, that's obviously a topic you don't want to get too deep into. But I mean, Google had the backlash. You know, if you remember in the beginning, they had the because the thing about that is you can't make everyone happy, can you? You know, you could Google got accused of being too woke when you know they would people would ask for a prompt of like the example was Nazis, and then Google gave you some multiracial Nazis, which obviously isn't historically what happened, and so they actually stopped having humans in their image generator for a long time after their backlash of that, and then now maybe there's a backlash the other way. I mean, I think the way around that is by prompting. You know, I mean, you know, most people do a very short prompt, but you can write a prompt that's hundreds of thousands of characters long, you know, so you can very much specify the type of teacher you want to see in the environment and etc. So I think, you know, Google, because like, you know, I think you have to put the power back to the person writing the prompt, not because, you know, they have to put, you know, the Google AI engine has to make a decision then about the race of a gender or anything of a teacher, and that's never going to make everybody happy, is it? I suppose
No,
I guess the person using it has to make the prompt to say what they want to see.
but what is interesting in the book is that by default, most of the data sets that they're working with are biased,
That makes
severely
sense. Yeah,
biased,
yeah, that makes
racist,
sense.
and gender bias, and so
Yeah,
that you know, and the thing is, which makes sense is that when you have a small bias and then it gets amplified on large data sets, and now that and I'm sure you've read also about this idea of synthetic data, because there's not enough information, a lot of these companies now are generating their own letting their large language models generate their own data to learn from, and this is called
yeah.
synthetic data. So it's interesting. You know, I think every year I get excited. This year I kind of just did a little, had to take a little breath as
Yeah.
2025 came in. I don't know. I just feel there's so much changing. And as you said, you know, if people are starting to lose their jobs, that has a huge domino effect on more than just those people, their communities. And I think that's going to be hard.
Sure, but hopefully, I mean, there's going to be, I mean, you know, prompt engineer is becoming a job description. You know, I mean, I think like everything, you know, there's, you know, when the Industrial Revolution came on and everyone thought, oh, well, you know, the agricultural jobs went, but new jobs came, and I think it's going to be the same situation with AI. We just don't know what those new jobs are going to be yet. That's my
Exactly.
opinion.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that unknown part is what makes people uncomfortable. It's like we don't know. And I'm in, you know, just imagine I'm like a 16, 15-year-old student. And I'm thinking, well, I love coding, but should I go and do coding? What do I actually go and do that's going to ensure me a certain income and a profession? I think that's all put into question in many different areas.
Definitely. What, John? Like, I'm curious. Like, if you were going to guess, what percentage of things which you would have searched for on Google are you now using an AI engine to answer questions?
Since ChatGPT has included the web search, I pretty much do everything there.
Oh, really? You just use ChatGPT's everything?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, what I do is anything that I do in ChatGPT, I always cross-reference with because I bought Gemini for my Google Workspace, my personal Gmail, and I have Google Workspace Gemini at school. I'm piloting it, uh, and I always cross-reference, and then I do a third cross-reference. I know I sound crazy with
Yeah,
Claude
that's great.
Sonnet. So I always like, and what I find is that as you work with one of these AIs, it kind of, especially if you have the paying account, it gets to know you.
Yeah.
It really gets to know you and knows your kind of the areas you're interested in, your language, how you prompt. And I find that if I then put that content in some of the others, the response is not as aligned with what ChatGPT can do because I've been working with it for 2 years and I've had the paid account. So it's definitely there's kind of an understanding of my style and my questions and kind of the topics that I'm looking at. I don't know if you've experienced that with Gemini.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, you've got a luxury of comparing a lot of tools, but I'm very much been focused on one, you know. So, but yeah, definitely agree.
So do you use Gemini day out?
Yeah, definitely. I use it within every day, within Gmail, within Drive. I use the Gemini, just Gemini.google.com for. I mean, I think it's probably replaced. I would guess a third of my Google searches, and now I'm just going straight to Gemini.
And there's, of course, there's the Google AI search now. I don't know if you have it in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, yeah, I've got that as well. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm using that as
And
well.
so that's interesting. And now I understand they're going to add the chat module in there, a bit like Copilot,
Exactly.
Microsoft Copilot. Yeah, and have you tried the agent? Have you tried an agent yet?
I haven't. James, I believe, has tried it, and then we're gonna catch up next week when we're back fully back into work mode. But yeah, no, we just James is just getting started on it.
So Google has released their agent. It's available like a beta.
Yeah, there's some kind of alpha version of it that's available. So yeah, yeah, it's
Okay, okay,
partnered.
okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Well done. I mean, I think that, compared to last year that felt a little dormant. I don't know. Don't you feel this year is like it's a big year?
I think
Or
so.
is
I
that
think it's going to
just
be huge. Yeah, I think the AI is going to be, you know, I guess last year it was like, is anything going to change? Is it, it was still unsure, but now I think it's here to stay, and I think it's going to change everything. And I think when we meet in another year, I think that things will have happened that we had no idea were going to happen.
I think that's I like the way you highlight that is that that's the thing that excites me and scares me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Excited and but also yeah, and it's interesting if I think of just the context of my two children who are adults working professionally. Uh, AI is an important part of their day to day because in their professions it's an expectation now to be able to use that for different contexts. So I think that
Interesting.
that highlights what you're kind of saying that it's going to become such. My concern is, are any emails or anything that I'm reading actually original anymore?
Well, that's one thing. It's interesting. We talked about this on a previous podcast that like, what are the second order effects of AI? And one of the second order effects for me is I virtually read no online content anymore. If someone makes a post on LinkedIn, I don't read it. Emails, I presume it's all just AI generated because there's so much content out there. And I think that's a big plus for people like us doing podcasts, people making live video content, because that's much harder to replace what you do with AI. You can make it more efficient. But the written content for me, people's articles, blog articles, honestly, you might as well not do it for as far as I'm concerned because I've just waded through so much AI content. Unless someone could send me a cast iron guarantee they wrote this, I just don't read it. Is that something you've come across?
Oh, it's so funny that you say that, but I have had a blog for many, many years, and I've been writing
Obviously,
articles here
the
and there.
exception of your blog, John.
No, 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 no. But I am going to write my last blog post tomorrow.
Yep,
And that's it. And I'm going. It's kind of my idea that this is the last time that you're going to get a blog post from me that isn't been spell checked, grammar checked, and enhanced by AI. And I think that's it's a new chapter, and I think your point's really interesting. The content that we're reading is, how if it's just AI regenerated, polished, or enhanced content, at some point you just disengage with it, right? That's what I'm hearing you're doing.
Definitely. Yeah, I have disengaged with it. I mean, it's happened for me. I just, like I said, I'm much more. I watch content on YouTube. I listen to podcasts. I still read books, but again, maybe in a few years I won't be reading books because it'll all be AI generated books.
Yeah, yeah. The question is, do we suddenly get a kind of an AI vanilla world where emails? I now I make a point of not using AI in my emails because I want people to remember my bad
Yeah.
spelling and my sentence structure because I think that's part of my identity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. If I'm firing off a quick email, I won't use Gemini. I'll just write it. Like so. There's definitely a fair share of spelling mistakes, but
When do you use it to, if it's a more complex email?
yeah. For example, well, a really good thing of Gemini, I might say, can you summarize all the correspondence between me and you over the last year? And it will give me a really good summary, and then I can base that on to reference what we'd be discussing. For example, that's one example.
Cool. I do like the Otter AI for meetings. I find that's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
The
Yeah.
online meeting, the online meeting. Anyways,
Yeah.
I feel like we've been running around a track here during the podcast, just trying to catch up on all this stuff. But I think one thing that I've really enjoyed is the feedback we get from people out there,
Yeah.
the people that write. We've had more interesting guests reach out. We were talking about this last year, as what makes a good podcast, etc. And we were getting a lot of these kind of scripted agent emails of people who are like, "What do
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
have to but I feel that has changed. I'm noticing more international school educators doing podcasts, so
Yeah.
we've got much more competition, which is
It's
great.
great. It's great.
It's interesting. I think people are finding that it's a nice vehicle, and I think one thing that is that we've been around now for 3 years, 146 episodes. I think something about podcasting is you have to stick to it. You have
Yeah.
to be kind of very much have a structure and framework. And hats off to Jane and the team that are supporting us in the background. But I just think that it's interesting how many podcasts are disappearing and coming, and you see a few that definitely last much longer. And I think it's just the consistency and making sure you're clear on what you're about. And we're pretty much about a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, I credit you. I mean, you getting involved is obviously what took it to the next level. I think
Thank you.
it's just a case of it's 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 very easy to start something. Anyone can start a blog, anyone can start a podcast, anyone can start a YouTube channel. Uh, 2 years in, when you haven't made any money out of it, and it's a Sunday night, and you're tired, and you've got to record an episode, are you going to do it? That's the question, and that's like, and we've done it. We picked a cadence that's doable for us once every 2 weeks.
I think
Um,
the 2 weeks is a good space. Yeah, absolutely. That's a
I
good
think,
cadence. Yeah.
yeah, any less than that, people would kind of forget about it. It's a month's a long time. Once a week. If you're not doing it as a commercial venture, I think once a week, I think it's really hard to do, to keep that going, week in, week out.
Yeah, and just think you have to get all the guests aligned, you have to make the appointments. So all those things take time. And one thing that we've done is sometimes like this is actually going to come out here in the next few days, but generally sometimes we'll record with somebody, like we recorded with Jonathan Taylor, and we'll talk. That's something to look forward to. Jonathan was a undercover policeman for the cyber online Scotland Yard, and then now has his own
Yeah,
safety in
really
schools
interesting.
consultant. It's super interesting. But we recorded that in December because he was never going to be available before or after. So I think those kind of things we do, and I think you do have to have some planning. You do have to say, okay, how many guests do we have lined up? Because trying to just find guests last minute that are interesting, I don't think that works.
No, definitely. And it's like, I mean, I mean, some podcasts you do yourself. I mean, I did a couple of roundtables myself. we do something together. I think it's the common theme is we just talk about things we're interested in. Like this is a conversation you and me would have in the pub, as
Yeah,
opposed or on the podcast.
exactly.
So, and
Yeah.
that's why I think, I don't think it can work any other way.
No, no. And we'll keep going. I mean, we both really enjoy doing it. We have had some great guests. I think we both learn from this. And
Yeah, definitely.
apparently, some people are listening to us because you have been to different parts of the world and done very informal surveys by
Yeah,
asking people to raise their hands. And a few people have raised their hands. So thank you for listening.
yeah. I mean, I spoke at, I guess, probably how many events this year? Last year, at least 7 events, maybe in Middle East, Asia, and Europe. And I always ask you to listen to the podcast, and generally about a third of the group will say yes, so which is great. That's fantastic. I mean, I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Absolutely. So, 2025, we're here. Uh, don't write down Dan and John's predictions because we
Yeah,
are not experts. This is just a reflection of what we're thinking, and just Dan and I were just thinking about. Who's listening and who are they. So we have a little survey. We're going to push it out. It's very simple. We're just curious where you are, what you do, what kind of school you're in, and if you're listening to us. And it's just a nice little way for us to get some data because
definitely.
we're not very data rich. Uh,
No, no, we're not.
that's
But
okay. That's okay.
yeah, and the other thing as well, if you're interested to come on the podcast, I mean, you don't have to have written a book or be a big name. If you've got something
No.
interesting to share, like an interesting topic you want to talk about, just get in touch. I mean, some of my favorite episodes are definitely not people that anyone would know outside of our, maybe small circle of international school people. So, like, and
Yeah.
they come out with the best content.
Absolutely. And so we have a LinkedIn group, International Schools Podcast on LinkedIn. If you want to message us, that's very likely the best place because I know if you send emails to Dan and I, they get lost amongst the hundreds of emails that we're dealing with, as everybody is. Everybody deals with a lot of
Yeah,
email and communication. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And again, thank you for all those people that have joined LinkedIn. And a lot of you share and reshare our podcast and then do a little highlight comment. And we're very grateful for that. And just appreciate that there are a few of you out there that are enjoying this. And we look forward to another year. We've got a lot of very cool guests coming down the line, and maybe we'll just one day have AI come on. I don't know. We could do that, Dan. Is just
be good.
have a chatbot come on and see what happens.
Let's do that. Great, John. Again, echo what you've said. It's been great. Looking forward to another year. Actually, John, you always mention that I never plug anything about my company. So if you don't mind, I do actually have something really quickly to plug for the first time.
Go ahead and plug your company.
No,
You'll be
what
forgiven.
just
I'm joking.
yeah, yeah. No, this is because we're talking about Gemini, and I mentioned before that's my focus. If you're looking at trying Google Gemini in your school, please get in touch. That's what we do. I run at UpCDU. We can do a trial. We can set up a trial of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Um, you can buy Gemini. You can buy it through any Google partner, even if you have Google Workspace through another partner. I know that's crazy, but some people do. You can still get Gemini through us. What we offer, just want to say, we first of all we give discounts. If you get 20 licenses, you get 5 free. And the main thing we do is we have a Gemini Insiders community. So anyone who has a Gemini license through us, they get access to the community. It's a Google Meet space. We record webinars every 2 weeks. Bogdan, who you know, John, is our lead trainer. He records sort of really timely training. It's available to watch on demand. But also in this community, we answer questions. Any question you've got about, and this is, let's say you have 50 users at your school, got licenses, they all get membership to the community, and we'll help them also. If you're interested in trying Gemini, even if just a trial for your school, 1, 2, 5, 10 licenses, please get in touch. And that's how I pay the bills and get to do the podcast. So please do that.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And no, I know Bogdan does fantastic work, and I know that I don't know how many times when you guys, James and Peter and people put videos up on YouTube, they're always so well done, and I always look at the updates that you share, and it's great if, especially if you're in the Google Workspace, because that's really your focus. Thank you, Dan, for
Definitely.
that, and well. great to catch up. You're heading back to Prague, I take it, and I'm heading
Yeah,
back to work here on Monday.
same.
And we look forward to another year, and thank you to our audience. Really sincerely, we so appreciate that you join us in these conversations, and more that you're sometimes sharing them with your professional learning network or your friends. And all the best for 2025.
Definitely. And again, I think next year, John, I'm going to be organized and go back to listen to what we said on the previous year's podcast to see, like, what our predictions and what we said
Predictions.
we were going to do. Exactly.
Okay, now I feel the pressure. Anyway,
You know,
well,
next year, I want to do. I want to have like categories of prediction for edtech tools, predictions for AI. I want to
that's
go through it. I
that's
want to go through and actually do
okay.
some predictions.
Okay, I like that. I've been listening to a lot of those on different podcasts and reading them. And
Yeah,
AI agents seems the thing that everybody's pointing to as one of the things that
definitely. Well,
resonates more with me.
definitely. Yeah, AI agency is going to be huge. John, happy New Year! Happy New Year to anyone listening to this. Please join our LinkedIn community. Get in touch. We love to hear from you. Sometimes we don't hear from people, if every time we do, if we get an email or a LinkedIn message or a review, makes us really happy. So please do it.
And thank you for doing that, those that do. And yeah, we'll see you for our next podcast.